Another crazy college football weekend is in the books. We're going to get to all of it. We're going to get to your questions. Remember, first off, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for being here. If you donate, your question will get read. If it's on topic, it'll get read literally when you post it. If not, the question or comment will get asked at the end. But again, please hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you guys joining us. David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, my brother, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver, Blaine Crain. And guys, I just before we're going to start with this Ohio State Penn State game. Before we dive into that one, though, just give me a phrase or a word to describe college football week 10. I enjoy doing this on every one of our recaps. David, starting with you, how would you describe what happened yesterday?
I guess I'll just pick insane. Maybe there's some college football fans around the country that thought because Alabama and LSU and Texas are off that, maybe we could have a sane weekend. And I don't know. I think you could make a case that it was the craziest it's been yet yesterday. And it almost for sure was if Florida had ended up pulling that upset. But, Georgia pulled away, but still crazy nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a running pattern here, and it's beautiful. It's the year of the Joker in college football. It's chaos weekend after weekend, whether the slate's supposed to be great, whether it's not supposed to be great, when deep down we know every slate is great when we wait so long for college football. Blaine, what do you think? How would you describe it?
Inconsistent. That's what I say my word would be. Teams are just different teams from week in, week out. It's really hard to put your thumb on certain teams. I mean, obviously home and field advantage is one thing. Road games are another thing. Wear and tear is one thing. Teams are getting beaten up. But I would just say inconsistent. You're seeing different. It's a Jekyll and Hyde situation every weekend in college football.
Yeah. Well, we always talk about that's the hardest thing. What makes the great coaches so great, what made Nick Saban so special was not just the ability to get really talented players in there and get them, to understand how important depth is and that they're going to get their shot, but that consistency week after week. We always talk about the blueprint, right? It's a faceless opponent. Whether you're playing Penn State, whether you're playing Auburn, or whether you're playing Tennessee Tech, it doesn't matter. It's about you. But speaking about inconsistency, there's one thing that has been consistent in college football for what seems like a while, and that's Penn State not being able to win any of these big games. And you know what? I fell for it. I did. I thought I've watched Penn State. I've watched every game they play. We talked about bringing Andy Kotelnicki over from Kansas, how this offense is different. Yet in the big moments of this game, and I think really throughout the game, we'll get to the goal line stand by Ohio State here in a little bit, where Tyler Warren didn't touch the ball, and you basically threw peanut butter and jelly at Ohio State's defense. I didn't think, David, I'll start with you, that Penn State's offense, the play calling was similar to what we had seen in the past. I mean, earlier in the year against USC, we saw all these different formations, all these different looks, throughout the season, even outside of that game, we saw them taking shots down the field, being aggressive. But it's just something about when they see that Ohio State logo or that Michigan State logo, it regresses back to the mean. It reverts back to the run and hide. I mean, neither team scored a touchdown in the second half, but Drew Aller, 12 of 20, 146 yards, didn't really take many shots down the field. I mean, he operated in a 15-yard box. Your leading rusher had 47 yards. It's funny, Katron Allen had 12 carries for 27 yards. Nicholas Singleton had 6 carries for 15 yards. Tyler Warren, the do-all-everything guy, had 3 carries for 47 yards. One of those was that big chunk play to get him down there. And then Drew Aller was your second leading rusher. And I want to give credit to Ohio State. But, David, am I wrong in saying I don't think either one of these teams played great yesterday?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I want to start with this. James Franklin is a very good football coach, and I think this Penn State team is still a good football team. And I know there's a lot of frustration right now for Penn State fans across the country, and there should be. But this is why the Buckeyes have been the standard in this conference for the first 2 decades of this century, and honestly for much of the last, because this is the movie we always see, and we saw it again. I understand the frustration for Penn State fans, and that should be there, because when you're the number 3 team in the country and you're at home and you have first and goal from inside the 5 2 different times and the offense can't score a point for the entire game, that to me is what I would describe as unacceptable. And we've talked about Andy Kotelnicki and the way that he's been, innovative and creative throughout the season. But to me, I'd rather just give the football to Tyler Warren 4 straight times, give the football to my best guy and say, you know what, I can live and die based off what this guy is able to do inside the 5-yard line. But look, you have to give all credit to the Buckeyes. I still think Penn State's going to move forward and be a playoff team. And now winning a playoff game or performing well in the playoffs is even more imperative, I think, for James Franklin, because you don't get Michigan. You don't get a chance to beat up on them in a down year. You don't get Oregon, so you don't get a chance to make up for this loss to the Buckeyes at home. So you really need to make the playoff and do something while you're there. But look, all credit to the Buckeyes. They spotted Penn State 10 points and still can't win this football game. We talked about some of the struggles they had on both sides of the ball, especially rushing. Rushing the football wasn't good the past couple of weeks against Nebraska. And they rushed for 179 against this Penn State defense. And look, I thought the MVP of the game was Chip Kelly. It was the first time I'd seen the Buckeyes didn't just over personnel Penn State. It wasn't just big plays every single time down the field. It was Chip Kelly and his innovations in the run game and picking up some of those key third downs. I thought that's really what made the difference.
Blaine, and Code's 100% right. The first thing you do is you have to give credit to Ohio State. I thought what they did with that makeshift offensive line, Judkins ends up almost hitting the century mark, 14 carries, 95 yards. Henderson, 10 carries, 54 yards. That's over 5 yards a pop. Will Howard, 12 for 24, did have that fumble into the end zone, which that and the Penn State interception right before halftime, they kind of canceled each other out, right? Because Penn State should have scored there. Ohio State should have scored there. But when it comes down to creativity, I spent all week. I don't want to say y'all, but I spent all week talking about Andy Kotelnicki. And throughout his whole career, I've watched him do it. But it was Chip Kelly, right? You had the tight end delays. They did a really good job horizontally, whether it was with meshes, getting backs out on wheels, being able to get them on overs. But in order to hit those, you got to protect the passer. And I thought they did a pretty good job of that with an offensive line that there were concerns about. They were even talking about it during the game. But when Penn State went up 10-0, Blaine, it was almost like it put him into run and hide mode. Like, all right, guys, we got this. This game's over. Let's just run the ball, not take chances, and we're going to beat Ohio State. You can't do that. Yeah. When you get a chance to put a foot on the throat early, you got to kill them.
Well, let's act like we've been there before, and Penn State did not do that. And I want to bring up one point David brought up. I think James Franklin is a good coach. I don't think he's a very good coach. I don't think he's won anything that has made him a very good coach. And Penn State's always littered with talent. Always littered with talent, and sooner or later, look, 10-2 is great. Obviously, it is. Penn State's one of the top-tier teams in the Big Ten, but the Penn State fans are sick of it. You're up 10 points. It doesn't get any better than this for James Franklin. You're at home. I know it's a big noon kickoff, which sucks. Everybody's hate. You go up 10 points. Will Howard is playing bad, and you still find a way to lose this football game. We can sit up here and talk about the offensive coordinator if we want to, and he did have a bad day, and Penn State's offense had a bad day. But sooner or later, okay, if I'm a Penn State fan and we have this talent walk through this team every year, and we can't win something that matters, sooner or later, you have to point to that guy as the head coach. Because hell, let's say one thing I look at Mario Cristobal, right? Let's look at Miami last year. Find ways to blow games, all right? Find ways to blow game. And what is Miami doing this year? Hell, walking into fourth quarter down by points and finding to win games. Sooner or later, James Franklin has to change something to find a way to win the big game.
Well, do you think it's just a mentality thing? I think a lot of it was, and again, all due credit to Ohio State, they started leaning on Penn State in the second half, including when they closed out the game. And I know people will talk about the officiating. The officiating didn't lose you the game if you're a Penn State fan. If I'm a Penn State fan, I'm so sick of having to find excuses for why we lose this game. And then you go up 10 points. But moving forward, and Blaine, I agree with you. There's something to be said for not losing the games that you shouldn't lose, right? Like that's an art form. A lot of coaches struggle with that. A lot of coaches will win big games, maybe games they're not supposed to, but then drop a game that they should win. James Franklin at Penn State has had one consistent problem. He can wipe everybody else in the Big Ten, and then they get rid of divisions, and you're like, oh, here we go. It's going to benefit Penn State more than anyone, and they're probably going to end up still going 11-1 or whatever it is. We'll see how it ends up and making the playoff. But how if I'm a Penn State fan, if you still can't beat Ohio State at home right now, what's going to happen in the playoff when you run up against a big dog and now you got to go out there and prove it? Is this a mental thing? Is there some sort of mental hurdle within the program permeated by James Franklin that they just can't do it? And then how do you get over that?
That's tough. You almost have to say there's a mental hurdle. You were up 10 points. I mean, you were up 10 points. You had your foot on the gas.
And it evaporated like that.
And it seemed like you just didn't know what to do because you've never been here before. All right. You didn't know how to act. And one thing I look at, and it's going to get talked about throughout college football, every show, you're on the goal line. Okay. And you bring that 71, that big offensive lineman 3 times. He touches nobody. You have Tyler Warren, who's the only reason you got down there. It just seems like James Franklin is somewhat clueless. In the moment, he is somewhat clueless. When he needs to do something important in a big pressure moment, he always does the opposite. And sooner or later, you can only chop your foot off so many times as a fan and then go back and try and play in the basketball court. It doesn't work like that, guys. If I'm a Penn State fan, it's the same thing what's going on in Ohio State. That game was huge for Ryan Day. Don't get it twisted. Huge road game. And now you're seeing the other side of what James Franklin's getting. He can't win the big game. And if I'm Penn State, I'm sick. I'm sick of just beating up on lower tier teams in the Big Ten. I want to win something important because you have the talent. You matched up pretty well, talent-wise and matchup-wise against Ohio State. The fact that Ohio State started leaning on you with a makeshift offensive line, it's so disrespectful to Penn State and the guys that they have up front. It's almost embarrassing to me. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, David, and I want to ask you how good you think Ohio State really is, because again, you lose to Oregon on the road by 1 point. You can make the case Oregon looks the best in the country right now. It seems they're only getting better. They dispatched Michigan pretty easily yesterday. But this Ohio State team, I think a lot of Ohio State fans will tell you, I don't know how much they trust Will Howard. I mean, you got people, Troy Smith saying at halftime, Julian Sands should get in the game. But if I'm James Franklin and I'm the head coach, all right, at the end of the day, what I want, I'm going to get. Right? I'm down at the goal line to bring up what Blaine's point is. Bring 71 in, that's fine. That's great. The fact that Tyler Warren did not touch the ball or Drew Aller did not keep one of those reads when everybody that has ever rooted for Ohio State and played at Ohio State was attacking the running back. I'm getting on the headset after first down and saying, Tyler Warren is getting in the game and running the ball. If you don't like it, then you're fired. I don't know. Maybe I'm different. I know what Kirby would have done. I know what Nick would have said.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as far as the Buckeyes go, I mean, I think they're good. Like in a year where like who has separated themselves as really good other than Oregon right now. And you lost to that team by 1 on the road. I mean, I'm watching Carson Beck throw 3 interceptions and his draft stock drops every single game. And yet Georgia's still really good. So it's a weird year. As far as the mental component, maybe there is a mental component to what's going on at Penn State. I do just think some of the teams you're losing to are still really, really good. They're good teams and they're really great programs. When I think of James Franklin, I think of Mark Richt a lot. I think Mark Richt was a very good football coach. I think James Franklin, James Franklin and Mark Richt are better head football coaches than Ed Orgeron and Gene Chizik. And yet both of those guys were able to piece together one magical season where they get that one great player and a couple great pieces around them and they go 15-0 and they win a national championship. And I'm sure Penn State fans would say, hey, we would trade that. We'd rather have one 15-0 national championship year rather than a full decade of winning 10 games, but we can't win the big ones. But at the same time, James Franklin is at least putting himself in a position to be able to do that. Another guy I think of is Jim Harbaugh. Just remember, guys, Michigan could have moved on for Jim Harbaugh after losing 6 or 7 straight in a row to the Buckeyes and sort of had a similar problem and losing to Michigan State and losing in bowl games. But hey, he was beating everyone else, right? Eventually, he figured it out, and they did get that national championship. So which one is James Franklin going to be? Is he going to be like Mark Richt, who beat everybody except couldn't win those big games to win a national championship, and then Kirby Smart replaces him and wins 2 of them? Or is he going to be more like Jim Harbaugh, who has struggled against these big teams, figures it out, though, and is able to take Penn State to the mountaintop?
Yeah, well, I mean, Penn State's the biggest tease in college football right now when we're talking about at the top. I'm going to get to the chat, Blaine.
All right, let's go to a $2 donation from Alan. Appreciate it, Alan. He says, Penn State is just Texas A&M in the Big Ten.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit against that because, Texas A&M, the joke with Texas A&M has always been 8-4, 8-4. You'll win one you're not supposed to and then lose one you're not supposed to. That's not Penn State's problem. They just can't win any of the big ones. They eat their vegetables, right? They'll eat the appetizers, they'll drink the water, but when it comes to the steak, they just won't finish it. Like there's one thing, it's not 9 things. It's not, what can go wrong will go wrong throughout the year. It's in the biggest moments when you get to the top of the mountain You don't know how to act. And not only that, you were up 10-0. You could not outside. And really that first drive, I mean, David, I was over at your house watching it. I mean, hell, we were still geeking because they had us on Fox. We're sitting out there before the game talking to each other. We got the volume turned up on the TV, and all of a sudden I hear me, and then we look at each other, and then Blaine texts us because he's on the way, and then we hear David, which was pretty wild. But it's one certain specific thing. It's the big moments, and you're up 10-0. That first drive, you ran the ball pretty well. You kind of pushed Ohio State around a little bit. Then Will Howard, still a lot of questions about him, throws just an absolutely horrendous pick six. Me and you could have jumped that on the slant on that third down. So you're up 10-0. That place is going nuts. I don't care if it was 6:45 in the morning or midnight, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, now let's blow it. That's just how it felt to me, and it felt lopsided pretty much the rest of the game.
And James Franklin did win a Big Ten championship. I haven't seen Texas A&M win their conference yet.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens here in a couple of weeks. But and we're going to get to the South Carolina game. It's just, man, it seems like we're seeing the same result over and over again.
I was going to Chad. He said that in the half, give the ball to number 44 twice on the goal line with one timeout left. Just stupid. He would have scored. Best player on the field. Franklin is clueless.
Well, I'll say this. Oh, you got to catch that ball. Like, if you're really about it, you catch that ball. That was a pretty damn good throw by Drew Aller. I'm with you. I'm not going to argue with you. I don't think Tyler Warren, how a guy can do what he did against USC, and then I don't think they gave him the ball enough in that game overall, David, not just at the goal line.
You talk about Tyler Warren?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guy plays, 6 or 7 different positions on offense. I'd give him the football in every way imaginable.
Yeah. All right, another one.
All right, I think Blaine stepped away. Hold on, let me see what's in the chat here.
Blaine's so disgusted with Penn State he had to step away. David, let's we can get back to the chat. Let's move on to this South Carolina A&M game because I want your thoughts on this, because this was one, and we each picked one. What was the scariest matchup of the weekend thanks to Halloween? And this was one of our three. And it was funny that this game in the first half, it yo-yoed, right? South Carolina jumps out to the big lead. Lenoris Sellers looks comfortable. We talked about, who's going to start at quarterback for A&M, Marcel Reed going on the road. How will he be? Then the second quarter, it kind of flipped, right? So we went into halftime 20-20. You're like, oh boy, the second half is about to be magic. But credit to Shane Beamer and South Carolina. They not only scored 24 points in the second half, 10 in the third, 14 in the fourth, but they shut out Texas A&M's offense. And we always talk about balance, right? In many different forms. Balance as a team, complementary football, special teams, defense, offense. Balance as an offense, right? Being able to run the ball, pass the ball, pitch backwards, be unpredictable on any down in any situation like a good pitcher. But I want to throw these numbers at you real quick. Lenoris, we talk about balance. All right, you have 244 passing yards. Lenoris Sellers, 13-27, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Rushing, 43 carries for 286 yards and 3 touchdowns. Rocket Sanders, 20 carries for 144 yards. Lenoris Sellers, 15 carries for 106 yards. You had 2 100-yard rushers combined. A&M did not have one. I didn't think Marcel Reed was awful, but this was more about South Carolina. And we talked about them being bipolar, right? They're like the guy from Split. One weekend, they look like they looked against Ole Miss. And then the next weekend, they look like juggernauts. I mean, they're playing close with Alabama, right? And beating Kentucky to death. But what I think separates this South Carolina team is when the play breaks down during those chaotic plays. We used to call them havoc plays on defense. When it turns into scramble drill, I thought Lenoris Sellers not only protected the ball, but made a ton of big plays to go with what they were doing in their normal offensive rhythm.
Man, I'm so proud of Shane Beamer. Can we just all acknowledge that, like right off the top? This is a win they needed. After what happened against LSU, you jumped out to a great start against LSU, had them on the ropes. You let that game slip away. The Alabama one, granted, that one was on the road, and they had to fight back to even make that one close, but still put themselves in a position to win at the end. Couldn't quite do it. And this one left no doubt, 44-20. And you talk about Rocket Sanders, 144 on the ground. He had another 92 yards receiving. Man, what a performance by him. And for Shane Beamer to be able to bring him in from Arkansas, and Lenoris Sellers just looked comfortable. You can see why Lenoris Sellers is going to be a star. But 286 yards rushing on this Texas A&M defense, which we've seen other teams, like even in the Notre Dame game, like Notre Dame couldn't get anything going against them, like not in a 286 rushing yard capacity. So I'm just so proud of Shane Beamer. And, I thought what would give them a chance is Marcel Reed being a younger guy going on the road and starting him for South Carolina to be able to game plan for him in a way that LSU couldn't. I thought, that with the crowd and being at home and being a night game, that could give him a chance. But 44-20, man, that's just a stomping.
Yeah, and I mean, Blaine, he talked about Rocket Sanders. Joshua Simon had 4 catches for $132 and 2 touchdowns. Let me, if you're and I know South Carolina fans are excited right now. What a day for them yesterday. You beat the shit out of Texas A&M, and Clemson loses at home against Louisville. I don't know if you could, outside of Miami, or not even Miami, but I don't know who else you could put on the list. It was almost a perfect day, or pretty much a perfect day if you're a South Carolina fan. But if you're an A&M fan going forward, you're 7-2. Mm-hmm. You're 5-1 in the conference. What did we talk about with that LSU A&M game and why that win was so big for A&M? Because that was your insurance game, right? So now you could have a mulligan or a breakfast ball, because A&M in reality does control their own destiny still, right? South Carolina's 3-3 in the conference. So any tiebreaker to make the SEC championship, you shouldn't worry about. But how loud would the alarm bell? How loud should it be ringing if you're a Texas A&M fan with the conference schedule they got coming down the pipe here?
I don't think it should be ringing that loud. You need to know who the South Carolina team is. This is a big-bodied South Carolina team. Lenore Sellers, huge, and can run. 220-plus quarterback. You have a 220-plus running back, and I don't think Texas A&M tackled well. I think this game got away from them in the second half. We all saw that. But I wouldn't be that much panic. I think Mike Elko's the type of coach who can get it fixed. I think y'all tackled terribly. Yeah. I think this is one of the worst tackling games from Texas A&M. And all credit to South Carolina. You're seeing South Carolina grow and what South Carolina can be. I thought the defenses somewhat showed up in big moments when it comes to sacks and getting to the quarterbacks and pressures. But if I'm Texas A&M, you have to remember you're in year what? Brother, you're in year 1. All right, so there should be no panic setting in at all. Look, it's tough week in, week out to go play in the SEC, and especially to go get wins against good teams. And right now, you just got beat up. South Carolina did what Texas A&M wanted to do, and they did it better. Texas A&M wants to play a physical brand of football. That's what they're about. South Carolina walked in and was the more physical team throughout the game.
And, David, looking ahead, and again, Shane Beamer, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year. He isn't going anywhere. So any of the talk of that, I think you can kind of put that to bed, especially after this big win. I know they got some big games coming up, including that rivalry game with Clemson. But if you're A&M now, basically what this means is that if you want to make the college football playoff, right, because you already have 2 losses, and the SEC championship, you got to win out, but now you have to win the Texas game, right? Yep. We talked about this scenario where if you won every game up to that, you could still clinch an SEC championship berth if you lost. Now you got to win out.
Look, it was most likely going to come down to the Texas game anyway. There was going to be a scenario where you had to beat them. Now, maybe there was a slim chance where, you could lose to Texas. That's your only conference loss, and you still get into the SEC championship game. I mean, I don't see that happening anymore now that you have another conference loss. But just keep in mind, even if they find a way, now what I'm interested in is what we talked about last week, Jake. Like, let's say Texas A&M moves forward and beats Texas, so you do find yourself in the SEC championship, because Texas A&M fans would gladly trade a loss against South Carolina for a win over Texas. I think
hands down.
They would do that anyway, but now it's even more imperative because that could put you in the SEC championship game. But now if you go find yourself in the conference championship and you pick up that 3rd loss, and now they'd be what, 9-3, or they'd be 10-3 at that point. Now, does that get you in the conference championship as an at-large because you didn't get the automatic qualifier?
Well, and again, excuse me, this is not going to happen, but how crazy would it be? There's a scenario, guys, in which if A&M, and again, this is probably not going to happen, they could lose to New Mexico State, beat Auburn and Texas, and be 9-3 going to the SEC championship. So we talked about, what are the scenarios where a 9-3 team could play in a conference championship? And we're like, well, which ones are out there? There's not a lot that are out there. Not that this one is likely. It's very unlikely. A&M will probably beat New Mexico State to death. But, being a guy from Auburn, I don't sleep on that New Mexico State game. But thank goodness for them, Diego Pavia is not there. Blaine, let's go ahead and go to the chat.
All right, let's go to Robert. He says, why aren't enough people talking about Lenore Sellers? The guy is going to be an absolute problem. Will Beamer keep his job after this year?
Yeah, again, like I just said, I don't, I don't think Shane Beamer's going anywhere, especially after that win. But the thing with Lenora Sellers, and what do we say at the beginning of the year? Whether it was Lenoris, whether it was Nico, whether it was Jackson Arnold, whether it's any of these young quarterbacks, when you have young quarterbacks, as a fan, you have to become a surfer. You have to ride the wave, the highs and the lows. But what you want to see is when obviously physically, how do they compare to everybody else? Lenora Sellers is a giant, right? He's huge and he can run. That's why he holds the ball like a tangerine. But you want to see when they play at their best, how elite is that? And you got the best version of Lenora Sellers that I think we have seen all year last night. And if you go back and watch the Kentucky game, the similarities in those havoc plays, that's what nothing scared me more as a defense coordinator. Look, we can talk about power read, which used to keep me up at night. We can talk about the quarterback's ability to run. We can talk about teams being able to line up and just run it at you or having all these wide receivers you can hit down the field. Nothing used to scare me more with that. What would happen when the play broke down? Because if you had a guy that could create, and Lenore Sellers may not be the most quick twitch guy, but he shakes off defensive linemen about as good as any quarterback that I've seen in a while. I mean, he's able to stay up and hang around. It's one way the way Cam Ward does it, where he makes you miss and then spins around and does like a cartwheel and turns into Ray Gun from the breakdancing competition. Lenore Sellers, you just try and tackle him. He's like an elephant swatting a fly off you, and then he takes off or he keeps his eyes down the field. That creates extra points. That's how you go from scoring 24 points a game to 35 points a game. Because, David, you know this better than anybody. A lot of scoring plays don't work out exactly the way they're drawn up, right? You go back and look at all the scoring drives, probably about 60% of them went how you wanted them. And then 40% was, well, hell, it was 3rd and 9. We called this pass play. He ran out of the pocket, found a guy crossing the field and scored a touchdown. So if you can do that, you can really, really put a strain on defenses at this level.
No doubt.
All right, let's go to Brian Cadence. What's up, Brian? It says, no panic for us Aggies. This is what we knew the season was most likely to be. I like what I've seen under Elko so far. It's year one. Let's not put the cart before the horse.
Oh, no, this isn't a negative. And make no mistake that this isn't a negative A&M situation right now.
Not negative ads, dude?
Yeah, no negative ads. I know we're in an election year, but no negative ads. I mean, let's be honest, all the A&M fans out there, and I think you'd be lying if you said no. If I went up to you and I said, hey, guys, I'll make a deal with you. All right, we'll be sitting here. All right, we'll be going into the last 3 games of the season. You'll be 7-2, 5-1 overall in the SEC, and you're going to get your ass kicked by South Carolina 44-20 with New Mexico State left, at Auburn left, and Texas at home. I think, David, they would have been insane not to take that deal.
No doubt. No doubt. And here's another scenario we hadn't talked about. I mean, this is still the type of team to me. If you're going to start a freshman, a young guy, this is the team that could go on the road and lose to Auburn. I don't think that that's going to happen, but you could go lose to Auburn and still beat Texas at home. That would be the craziest scenario. But again, I mean, I don't think you find yourself in the conference championship at that point, but I mean, you're talking about year one under Mike Elko and you're able to beat Texas at home after they stole your baseball coach. Like that's still going to get a lot of people fired up.
Definitely. All right, go ahead. One more, Blaine, then we'll move on.
Let's go to Double O'Neal with the $3 donation. He said, I previously said no 3-loss team would make it in, but at this rate, with all the losses piling up, fellas, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, we get our first college football playoff rankings revealed on Tuesday. I do not envy the guys in that seat. And again, it's going to change just like last week when, everyone is like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? A lot of this is going to work itself out. I mean, look at the Big 12 right now. Kansas State goes down to Houston. Colorado and BYU were the 2 biggest winners in the Big 12 last night. Kansas State loses to Houston.
And Texas.
Right? Iowa State still has to play Kansas State. Iowa State loses to Texas Tech at home. So it's just there's going to be chaos. And I don't think it's going to be chaos toward the, oh, my God, all these teams could possibly get in. I think we're going to start seeing eliminations happen these last 3 weeks, right? And we talked about eliminations for most teams being 3 losses. But talk about getting eliminated. What Ole Miss did to Arkansas yesterday is assault in 47 of the 50 states. And I think, the other 3 are going to vote on Amendment 6 here after this and go ahead and pass it. All week I asked, and I've asked for it seems like all year, where is the fun gone in this Ole Miss offense? Where is the fun? Where is the joy? All I heard was, man, if Ole Miss could actually get a defense, they could win a championship. And then they get the best defense they've had since I can remember, right? Best defense Lane Kiffin's had since I can remember. And the offense felt like they were stuck in the mud. They couldn't hit big plays. Guys were hurt. Arkansas was kind of on the come up a little bit, you felt like, put up 600 yards against Mississippi State the week before. And I just – Ole Miss beat Arkansas 63-31. Just think about this. Arkansas scored 31 points, and they got beat. They got doubled up. But listen to these numbers. Jackson Dart played I don't know how you play a better game than this at quarterback. He was 25 of 31 for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns. Hell, Austin Simmons came in and was 3 for 3 for 47 yards and a touchdown.
Jackson Dart was their leading rusher.
I'm gonna get. Oh, believe me, I'm gonna get to it. So they were 20. David, how about this stat line? What's this quarterback rating? 28 of 34 for 562 and 7 tuds. On the ground, I mean, it's insane. But he didn't even have he wasn't the player on Ole Miss that had the best game. It was Jordan Watkins on 8 catches. 8, okay? I think he averaged 30 yards a catch, 8 catches, 254 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And then Caden Lee just had an okay game with 5 catches for $130 and no touchdowns. We've given Travis Williams a lot of credit for what he's done with this Arkansas defense, and I still think it's well-deserved. And I know Taylor Green got hurt early in the game.
Didn't matter.
Let me give you a hint. His ass don't play defense. And what Ole Miss did to that Arkansas defense, which I got respect for that Arkansas defense, where has this Ole Miss been? Where has this one been? Not that you're going to score 63 points a game, but the big plays, the high flying, the Cirque du Soleil, Lane Kiffin throwing the clipboard, dialing it up, right? If this was the Ole Miss team, and they still got time, David, if this is them now, not just watch out SEC, watch out college football world.
This is the part of college football that I was saying I don't understand this year. This is the part that's insane. Not that Ole Miss beat Arkansas, like they were favored to do so, but I'm talking about an Ole Miss team that hasn't put up 30 points in the last 5 weeks. Almost did that in the second quarter alone. They had a 28-point second quarter against an Arkansas defense that after they played Tennessee, we said, man, like this guy's going to get a head coaching job next year. This is one of the better defenses in the conference. And then they hang 63 on him. That's the part that I really don't understand. But again, one of the questions we had asked is an Ole Miss team led by Lane Kiffin, are they better in situations where their back is against the wall, in must-win situations? Because that's what they've been in, right? That's what they've been in with 2 losses. Still possibly can make the college football playoff. They have to run the table. They're still going to get Georgia. They need to win games like this. Are they a better program when they're in must-win situations rather than finding themselves undefeated and having to, manage the expectations of being a top 5 team in the country?
And Blaine, we bring up, how it waterfalled schematically watching this game, because again, I'm over at Cones. You're about to show up. I know you're watching on your phone on the way over there.
I got that.
Arkansas gets the ball, has to punt. Ole Miss drives all the way down the field and gets stoned at the 1. And if you look early in that game, right, Arkansas was playing base stuff. They really weren't pressuring that much. Mm-hmm. They weren't They weren't stunning on the defensive line as much, because we said, are they going to feel them out? Because this Ole Miss offensive line has struggled throughout the year. Are they going to feel them out and see if, hey, we can run our base stuff, we can line up in overs, we can line up in unders, mix our coverages, and be able to survive that way? Well, about halfway through the second quarter, they said, oh, no. Like, now we got to start taking chances. And when you start taking chances, whether it's stunting the front, and every defensive coach out there right now is shaking his head listening to this, start stunting the front or start blitzing. Where are you the weakest at if you don't get home? It's in the back end. So all these Arkansas fans are like, how in the hell is Jordan Watkins and Caden Lee doing a Broadway musical 25 yards down the field and nobody's next to him? Well, you were having to bring the funk because you knew offensively with Taylor Green beat up, there wasn't a great chance against this Ole Miss defense that you were going to drop, 45 points to be able to keep up in a track meet. So then you have to start forcing the issue. And to Ole Miss's credit, they were able to hang in long enough, and Jackson was able to anticipate enough to really take advantage of them down the field. Yeah,
when you blitz and you stun, especially up front on defense, it's basically Russian roulette. That's the game you have to play. And one thing we've talked about Ole Miss the last couple of weeks, who's the guy outside of Trey Harris I can trust? Right? Who's the guy that can be the difference? I think we found that Saturday. Did he tie the record, Dave, or broke the record? I'm pretty sure
I think he broke a couple. He broke a couple and tied a couple SEC records with yardage and touchdowns.
But this is what we've been saying about Ole Miss the last couple. I expected this Ole Miss team last weekend.
Yeah.
Right. Against an Oklahoma team that's beat up. The one thing about Ole Miss we saw is a lot of defense has been doing a good job of keeping Ole Miss in front of them. Look, and if you're Ole Miss and Arkansas, you can't give up 8 sacks and expect to win the game. Like, I'm sorry, you can't. Sam Pittman is known for what? Offensive line play, and it just didn't show up today. I don't think Arkansas played terrible, but this is the Ole Miss team. And, Jake, I thought what you said last week or this week was perfect. Ole Miss looked like they had fun today on offense. When Ole Miss has fun, they're throwing the ball around, they're pushing the ball down the field. They're as dangerous as anybody. But the last couple of weeks before that, it felt stagnant. It felt stuck, and a lot of that has to do with up front on the offensive line. So it's a great win for Ole Miss. I don't know how much I'm going to pocket it into winning, like Ole Miss being for real, because I've seen Ole Miss against good teams get their ass kicked up front. So that's going to have to change to me. But great win for Ole Miss for sure.
Yeah. And it's funny. I want to get to the chat because I know there's a lot of buzz in there. Please hit that subscribe button. Thank all you guys for being here. It's really an honor to be able to talk sports with you guys. It comes down to the offensive line. We know who Jackson Dart is, right? Yeah. Like we know the running ability of this team. We know that Watkins can play. Caden Lee's done some things. We know who Trey Harris is when he's healthy. It was the offensive line. And we said that the LSU offensive line and the Ole Miss offensive line have been somewhat of a letdown this year. But the funny part about that is both of those teams, as we sit right now, are still in the hunt. They're still in the race for not just the college football playoff, but an SEC championship game berth as well. Ole Miss got a huge one against Georgia. Guys, these next 3 weeks are going to be fascinating. But if Ole Miss goes out there like that and it's fun again, right? And you start, it's kind of like, I guess, Lane Kiffin's been there long enough. I guess it's, and I've only been married for about 2 years, but I guess it's like, you meet somebody and you go out and you have fun. You go on all these trips and you go out to eat at these restaurants and you try new things, right? And then you're together 5 years, right? Maybe you have kids. Then it gets stagnant, right? You're not doing the fun stuff anymore. It's just, it's so much more routine. But then all of a sudden, you go to Six Flags again, or you go to Myrtle Beach and it sparks it. Now, hey, you know what? Let's get a babysitter and go out on a Friday night. Let's go dancing, right? What did Vince Vaughn say? Feel a little bit dangerous, but also safe. That's what it feels like to me with Ole Miss. The fun needs to be there. Make date night fun again.
I just don't think anybody's fixed a relationship by going to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, the old Myrtle Beach
Kenny
trip,
Powers did.
So do they beat Georgia or not? I know we're getting into it tomorrow.
Oh, David, don't. I
we
want to
can
wait
save it for tomorrow. We can save it for tomorrow.
That's you asking too much of me.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Dean Olson with a $100 donation. Dean, appreciate it, brother.
Dean.
Boys, sending this from Perth, Australia, and doubling up since I missed celebrating Indiana's win last week. Indiana is criminally underrated in the AP poll behind Notre Dame, Iowa State, and A&M Clemson last week. How worried should I be that college football shows similar bias against our Hoosiers?
Well, David, I'm going to let
embrace the underrated.
Pick up Indiana. Can you pull up Indiana's schedule real quick while Cone answers this? Because I got a big answer, Cone, and I'm going to take a bite of this sausage biscuit my beautiful wife made me this.
Yeah, I was wondering what you brought you, dude. I'm super jelly. I'm going to be honest.
Wow.
It's homemade Jimmy Dean
nice.
sausage.
So right now, the rest of Indiana's schedule, you have Michigan at home. Shout out, Cone. And then you go to the road at Ohio State, and you play Purdue.
David, where do you put Indiana right now?
Where do I put them? Where? In the top 25 or within the conference?
In the hierarchy of college football, would you put them in the top 5 right now?
Ooh, top 5. I wouldn't put them in the top 5 right now because I don't think the strength of schedule is there. But when you talk about the eye test, like you and I have been talking about them for like 8 weeks at this point, because again, it was like, hey, Kirk Cignetti's coming in, and we knew he brought the 13 guys from James Madison, brought in some other transfers. I just had to see it with my own eyes. Like, can you actually go win these games with this amount of swagger? And they have been doing that. I don't know about top 5 right this second, but they're going to be there because I think they're going to go beat Michigan. All right. Now, can they beat the Buckeyes? Are they sort of in the similar situation with Penn State? Can they beat the top teams in the conference? Because they're not going to get another crack at, say, Oregon in the conference. They're not going to get some of the other teams. They're not going to get the chance to beat, Penn State this year. But they could still find themselves in the conference championship. And then at that point, if you go win the conference, it doesn't matter if you're underrated. It doesn't matter what sports media people around the country think, because guess what? You're one of the top 4 teams, and you get a first-round bye in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Dean, first off, thanks for the donation, brother. Be careful out there. You know what they say about Australia. Don't go too far out in the woods or the water. But if you want a show that's been talking about Indiana for a while, like from the jump, told you a team to watch out for. And I can't remember who it was, which one of us before the season. I think it may have been all of us talking about how dangerous Cignetti is because he's got that cool dad swag, right? You look at him, off the huff, maybe wearing khakis that are a little bit too big for him. Maybe he buttons the top collar of his shirt, a little bit too close. He's got the white Adidas on, the dad specials. But he pulls up to the middle school carpool line. He's banging that new Drake mixtape. And everybody's like, who's that cool dad rocking the Oakleys?
No one has ever said that about Kirk Cignetti.
I have.
No one has ever said Kirk Cignetti's the cool dad.
He is the cool dad.
He looks like he's going to sell me insurance on a Thursday at 3.
Yeah, and then take you out for happy hour and get drunk.
If it's Chili's, I'm okay with it. But if he takes you to Applebee's, I'm pissed.
It's because Chili's is a cool place. You ever been there? Grow up, Peter Pan.
For the boys.
But here's why Indiana to me is way more dangerous than Penn State. They're playing with house money.
Mm-hmm.
Like Penn State's got so much pressure. I mean, it's literally, you can see it like going through their veins to finally do this. Indiana just showed up to the dance with a 6-pack and they're like, hey, where the ladies at? Like, I've got nothing to lose, right? You're the fat, funny kid with a great personality. Nobody expects that much. So when you look at this game and then you actually watch this team play, though, with Rourke healthy, and guys, the consistent mindset of this team. I've watched Indiana in games where they got a lead early and just drugged the other team, did not slow down. You look at the game yesterday, they're down 10-0 on the road, and they just mopped it. No panic. They know who they are. I watched Cignetti in these games. I'm trying to forget who it was. I think it may have been Maryland. He was upset that they weren't beating them worse. Like, in that mindset at Indiana, just think about having that mindset at Indiana football. It's what Clark Lee is doing at Vanderbilt. It's not, can we win? It's not, oh my God, I hope we win. It's, we didn't win by enough. Like, once that becomes you, and then you watch them on the field, and you're like, wow, they play complimentary football. Wow, they're good up front. Wow, they got guys that can break tackles, and they can make tackles in open space. They're going to beat Michigan. This is a college football playoff team. 11-1 Indiana is going to make the college football playoff. There is no way in hell that an 11-1 Big Ten team doesn't make the college football playoff.
True.
But I'm telling you guys right now, I got a feeling this Indiana team may go to Ohio State and win this game for a couple reasons. One I just mentioned, house money. And you got to get by Michigan, right? Got to get by Michigan at 2:30 on CBS. We'll see who's playing on that defense. But you're going on the road, which galvanizes guys sometimes. And Ohio State's a hell of an atmosphere. Coney, you know better than anybody. But you're playing with house money. You've got nothing to lose. It's the exact opposite of Penn State. Do not be shocked, guys, if Indiana and Oregon are both undefeated playing in the Big Ten championship game.
Man,
we get to the end.
No one had that. And we won't get the Penn State matchup, obviously, but they may just be better than Penn State. It may not be a playing with house money mentality thing. They may just be better. But here's what you can't do. Here's what you can't do if you're Indiana. You can't lose to Michigan and the Buckeyes, right? And I know, and right now I think Indiana's a better football team than Michigan. I think that they're going to win that football game. It's at home, but Michigan still has a lot of dudes, right? Like Michigan can still come in and beat you if you're not fully prepared. You can't lose to them in a year where you're going to face them unranked and then lose to the Buckeyes because, like I said, the strength of schedule is just not going to help you out enough if you're 10-2. At that point, you need so much chaos across college football, and I just don't know if there's enough time in the remaining weeks for that to happen.
Yep. Blaine, back to the chat, then we'll move.
All right, let's go to Ducati 15. He says, will Kirk Cignetti be the head coach of Indiana next year?
That's a great question.
See, I need to know what happens with Billy Napier. But, like, I know guys that know Cignetti in the coaching world. There's some that like him, some that don't like him. When you go about your business that way, sometimes that's how it rolls. But I don't know if he's a guy that would jump ship after 1 year, but like if you go undefeated, think about this. If you go undefeated at Indiana in your first year, you make the college football playoff at Indiana in your first year. Yeah, you've got some of your guys from James Madison, but you haven't even gotten that place really humming from a recruiting standpoint left. And you can win 8 games a year there and be a hero. Would you really want to leave? Like, is it? I just don't know.
Indiana?
I don't know him well enough. Yeah.
If Florida offers him a job, he's going.
If the Florida job comes open,
yeah,
sure. Some guys we say that, but it's different. But kind of me watching the way Cignetti operates, I think he views himself as the best, and he wants to be at the place that is the best. And Florida, you could make a good argument, is one of the best places to coach, if not the best, in college football. So I don't know him personally, but I would be surprised if that Florida job didn't open if Cignetti didn't take it. And I don't know, maybe somebody's been saying that for the past 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know, maybe it was me.
All right, let's go to Darth Ducky. He says strength of schedule is always subjective anyways, unless you're doing it all off the win-loss ratio of your opponents. The AP is biased AF. I don't know what will happen with Indy.
Well, who cares about the AP? I mean, the AP it has no bearing. The college football playoff is going to decide, and that first poll is going to come out Tuesday. And yeah, this is where we always talk about, okay, well, how are we going to judge strength of schedule? Is it when you play that team and whether they were ranked or not, or is it at the end of the season, right? Like Texas's win against Michigan, that was a ranked win at the time. It's not going to be at the end of the season. That's where that factors in.
Yeah, well, that's why the AP stands for always poop.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I was always wondered. Okay.
Yeah, it's always
you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Let's go to the J-Man. He says, Cignetti wants to be at West Virginia. He is an alum, boys.
Leaving for
Neil Brown's looking over his shoulder right now, buddy.
I'd say right now he stays. I'd say he's the head coach at Indiana next year, but I don't know personally. So
I wonder what the betting odds would be. But I tell you, speaking about betting, if you are betting on Carson Beck to be a top 3 pick going into this next year's draft, yesterday I think Carson Beck continues to lose a lot of money, but I think Colson Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, continues to make a lot of money.
Oh,
we're going to get to that Oregon-Michigan game.
But he's going to stay for his senior year, though, Jake. I don't know if you heard or not.
Yeah, I would.
I'm consulting him to come back for one more year.
Oh, you are good. Yeah. Well, maybe he'll stay.
Colson, NFL, we ready?
Yeah. Guys, this Georgia-Florida game. I mean, say what you want about Billy Napier. I think he had the guys ready to play in this one about as much as you could. And then DJ Lagway goes down with that hamstring injury. You don't have Graham Mertz. So basically, you got one of the kids from Holes in there playing quarterback against Georgia's defense, which it's, Aiden Warner, 7-22, 66 yards and a pick. I can't be it's hard for me to sit here and be like, oh, he sucks. Like that's a really tough situation. But this discussion to me is only about Florida with Billy Napier. The discussion about Georgia is much larger. Yes, you're 7-1. Yes, you're 5-1. I know this is a rivalry game. I know it's typically always tight, but I'm watching Carson Beck make, and it's not the throws, it's the decisions. Sometimes you got picks where it tips off a guy's finger or it gets deflected at the line or receiver runs the wrong route. That stuff happens. But the decision-making of Carson Beck, and he should have thrown 4. There should have been a 4th one that didn't get picked, went right through the hands of the Florida guy. But especially over the middle of the field in the intermediate game, he still finished for 309, 2 touchdowns, but 3 more interceptions. I'm just looking at this Georgia team, man, and it's if I can't trust Carson Beck, then you guys are screwed when it comes to winning a national championship, because that was supposed to be the beacon replacement to bring everybody else along after you lost Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. The defense is still good, not the best defense they've had. And I mean, Florida Jacoby ran for 74 yards on 12 carries. They didn't even have Montrell out there. I don't know. This Georgia team just looks like a good football team right now, but why is their quarterback, David, making these mistakes as an older guy?
How wild is this, man? This Florida team that we just thought, Billy Napier was going to get fired possibly weeks ago, is up on Georgia in the second half with their 3rd string quarterback in the football game. And then lo and behold, when it's all said and done, you still lost 34-20, right? You still lost by 2 touchdowns as poorly as Carson Beck played, even with the 3 interceptions. Yeah. I know that some Georgia fans are split on Mike Bobo. There's some that just really don't like him and they don't like his play calling. And that's gone back way before Todd Monken was the OC and Kirby Smart was the head coach. But you can't blame Mike Bobo for some of these throws. I understand that Brock Bowers isn't there. I know Ladd McConkey's not on the outside. That's no excuse for some of the throws that I'm seeing Carson Beck make. And look, I thought he was going to be a top 3 pick, and he was my preseason pick to win the Heisman Trophy. So I'm surprised as anyone. Now, when it looks good, boys, it looks really good. I mean, if you put his fastball, when he bangs a dig route, you can put that up against anyone in the country, and I'll take him. But the problem is, we've seen what's the interception count right now? Something like 11 picks and 11 picks in the last 3 or 4 games. Like, that's unacceptable. And yet still Georgia is 7-1. Now, I don't think that their defense is really good. I don't know if their defense is good enough to win the national championship if this is the Carson Beck that you're going to get every single week. But again, he's the type of guy where he can figure it out. He can figure it out for a full game. It's just, when is it going to happen? He can play a full game like he did the second half of that Alabama game. And if he does that combined with Georgia's defense, then yeah, they're going to still have a shot.
Blaine, I want to throw a couple scenarios at you for Georgia. I want the Georgia fans to really, really listen to me here and vibe me here, because there's a couple things going on. I don't think you can take away his stinger, right, by saying, you know what, we're just going to leave it on the run game and the defense. To David's point, I don't think the defense is elite enough for you to be able to do that. And I think Carson's, with the offense he has around him, he has to take some chances. He has to not be afraid to push the ball down the field. So you don't want to – we talk about taking a defensive guy's stinger away because of targeting. You don't want to do it to a quarterback either. But if you're a Georgia fan, you are looking toward the top, right? You are looking at Oregon. You are looking at Ohio State. You are looking at Miami. You are looking at the cream of the crop in college football, Tennessee, all these other places. And that's what you're going to measure yourself from. And that's an earned right, and you should. But going forward, if you're Georgia, why on earth, and I get it in this game against Florida, right? Circumstance dictate outcomes. The quarterback goes down. He's the backup quarterback. The third string's in there. You don't want to start doing crazy stuff on offense, right? You want to let them bury themselves a little bit. But why have they stopped going up tempo? Why? You did it in the second half of the Bama game. And you know what going up tempo does? It takes a lot of the thinking out of it. Why do you think some quarterbacks are better in a 2-minute drill than they are in the other 58 minutes that goes on? Because you take a lot of the thinking out of it. I don't know if Carson's overthinking it, but if I'm Georgia, right, and we got Ole Miss and we got Tennessee, both of which will go up tempo, why do you not go back to the up tempo and say, listen, Carson, we're going to take some of the thinking out of it. We're going to put the defense on their heels. And maybe by going that fast, you can be a little bit more simplistic offensively because you're catching the defense and base a lot more, hence why you go fast.
Yeah, Georgia got extremely lucky in this football game that DJ Lagway went out early. I know he was 2 for 6, but he looked good. Right now, if you're Georgia, you're not feeling comfortable about a lot of things. Huge wins against Texas the week before, but you did not look good in this football game, in my opinion. Florida had every opportunity to go and win this game. They were just banged up. You basically played against every third stringer out there. I don't feel bad for Billy Napier. I don't know why you would. You've had plenty of opportunities to win big games, and you have not done that. So, if anybody to blame, go in the bathroom and look in the mirror. It's you, buddy. But right now, if I'm Georgia, how worried should you be? Offensively, Carson Beck has 11 interceptions on the year, which is unacceptable. He's basically played himself into a late round first pick, maybe a second round. Your running game hasn't been great. ETN went out early in that game. Nate Johnson looked good. Nate Frazier, excuse me. Nate Johnson's a backup quarterback right now.
His celebration wasn't very –
Yeah, I know, and Kirby let him know about that. But right now, if you're Georgia, you're catching Ole Miss at a terrible time. Georgia's defense is going to keep you in a lot of football games. Most of your football games, you saw that with Texas. But Carson Beck has to be Carson Beck if they want to win a national championship.
Well, you're not the number 2 team in the country right now. And I think any rational Georgia fan will agree.
Who is?
I think Oregon's won. I think Oregon's won. You know – You can make an argument for Ohio State. I mean, because of Oregon being number 1, like if Ohio State, and again, you look at Georgia's loss, right? Then you look at Ohio State's loss. I would put Ohio State 2. I really would. Right now, I think you can make a case for a decent amount of teams, but this just, if you're a Georgia fan, you understand what a championship elite team looks like. And that is not what this team looks like right now.
I agree. Let's go to a $5 donation from Devin W. Said, did Kirby Smart get enough in that kid's ass on the sidelines? This Georgia team does not look like the same Georgia team I'm used to seeing. But, Jake, are they good enough to win it all?
I mean, if Carson Beck plays well, I think they have a chance, right? Now, do I think they can play just okay and get away with what they used to get away with? No, I don't. I think they have to play really, really well consistently. But it's still Georgia. You still have the personnel. And I will say this, what a high-class problem. What a high-class problem where your biggest ass chewing is because of a touchdown celebration. I would look at Auburn. We would love to have those problems. I mean, we got We got 2 paraplegics and a blind kid on offense over here. We couldn't celebrate if we wanted to. We're celebrating first downs. Okay, so to me, that's not the overarching problem. The overarching problem is the guy that is supposed to be the difference maker for y'all. The guy that was supposed to make up for some of the losses y'all had on offense is not only not making up for it, he's become the biggest problem, right? But it's not like you can go to somebody else, and you don't need to. Because Carson Beck is your best chance to win a national championship. Because like David said, when he's good, man, it's really good. Like you watch him and you're like, okay, I get it, right? You watch him throw the whole shot against cover 2 and you're like, okay, I get it, why the Giants would really want him. But the decision-making, and that's really kind of been his bag. That's been the most surprising thing.
All right, let's go to committed. He says UGA is not great, but Ohio State is definitely not the number 2 team in the country. Them boys soft as hell.
I mean,
how much would you like to see? How much would you like to see Kirby Smart in that Georgia defense game plan for Dylan Gabriel and Oregon's offense?
Can I ask
we might get that.
And I know this is completely off topic. We don't have to run with it. But is Miami good enough to win a national championship?
Man, they're in the conversation for sure. I mean, you could put them at number 2. I mean, that defense is not great.
Well, let's do the math here, guys. Let's say that Miami wins the ACC, goes undefeated, and they're a top 4 team that gets a bye, right? So 12 teams get in. All right, 8 teams play, which means there'll be 4 teams left. So by the time a top 4 seed plays, there's 8 teams. So you got to win what? 2 games? 3 games? What is it, 3 games, David? You got to win 3 games to win a national championship if you get a bye, or is it 2 games?
3.
3. Can Miami survive their own defense enough and play damn near perfect on offense against some of these cats that they're going to see to be able to win 3 games? I think they could win 1. I think their ceiling is possibly 2, depending on the matchup. I think Cam Ward is incredible. What he did against Duke, who I got respect for on defense, not just because of Manny Diaz, but because of what they've done in their past. It's incredible. Restrepo, incredible, right? That big 95-year-old tight end they got, damn good player. Offensive line's good. That defense a problem, though, man. Like, when you're getting mossed on by Duke, like, because it's at some point, you're going to run up against a team that can negate you offensively somewhat and then score on offense. To me, that's where Miami is going to be really good, but they're not really balanced. So do they have a chance? I mean, yeah, but it's got to be a threaded needle, and you're probably going to have to win games 48-45. You know who it reminds me of? Every one of Lincoln Riley's teams. Every one of them. Yeah. That's who they remind me of.
Yeah, that's a good comp. I think about Colorado a little bit when I think about Miami. I don't think the style, based off the last 3 years and really 3 to 5 years that we've seen with Georgia winning 2 national championships with those defenses, Michigan's defense last year leading the country, it doesn't seem like Miami or Colorado's style of play could win it all. But then again, they have the type of guys that can keep them in any football game. And if you can stay in any game offensively and score a bunch of points, then you can technically win any game. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go a little bit quicker here. Then we're going to get to all these donuts here at the end. Speaking of the ACC, Clemson guys, wow. Wow.
Hey, Blaine, didn't you pick Louisville as one of your dogs?
No, not one of my dogs. My Clemson Louisville game was a scary matchup for Halloween.
That's right. That's right. Boy.
I thought you picked them as one of your dogs.
No, I had me and you both row with Pitt, which good God. And then I took Washington.
Gotcha.
I watched this whole game in shock. Just in shock. Not
Me
because
too.
Not because I didn't think Louisville was any good, but you're missing Lacey, right? And this Clemson defense, and I know the schedule hasn't been amazing since they played Georgia, but they did hold Georgia to 6 points for the first half, and then it kind of just waterfalled on them in the second. But Isaac Brown, who, by the way, this freshman running back that Louisville has, can absolutely skate. Ran for 151 yards in this Clemson defense. Phil Maffa running for $171 against Louisville's defense. It's great, but it's not shocking to me because this Clemson team was supposed to be the balanced team in the ACC. They were supposed to be the remedy to what Miami's problems were, right? Miami very heavy offensively, very weak defensively. This Clemson team, while they may not have been as good offensively as Miami, they were a hell of a lot better than them defensively. And just watching this game, it felt to me And I want to give all the credit in the world to Jeff Brom in Louisville, who played pretty much mistake-free. I know Shuck didn't throw a touchdown, but he didn't throw an interception. He was decently consistent. But it felt to me like Clemson was looking past this game. It felt like to me that Clemson just thought they could roll their helmets out there. Hey, we're at home. Dabo's going to goofily run down the hill, and we're just going to beat the shit out of Louisville. Well, that didn't happen. In fact, I thought Louisville beat them at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And I know they gave up $171 to Maffa on 30 carries, but a lot of that was at the end when Louisville was letting them hand the ball off and run the clock. And Dabo's decision to kick the extra point instead of go for 2 to make it an 11-point game instead of a 12-point game was coaching malpractice. So if you're Clemson, if you're SMU, first off, what a night for you. What a night for you. Yes. Clemson gets a loss. Miami's still undefeated, but you beat Pitt. Pitt's got to play Clemson. One of them's going to be eliminated. Yep. And boys, I'm not going to put the cart before the horse.
They're in. But SMU's in.
When it comes to SMU, I'm talking about.
Not yet, Jake.
Not yet. You're right. I'm not going to do it yet.
Let
SMU get in that ACC championship game, because if you watch Crain and company, you know exactly why.
Jake, I do want to ask you this. Who do you think Clemson was looking past to?
Well,
Alabama.
Well, let me put it this way. Maybe this is a better way to put it. Not looking to somebody ahead on their schedule, but just looking ahead in general. Like, we can coast this thing out. We don't play Miami. We don't play SMU. Yeah, we got to go to Pitt in a couple weeks. It just felt to me when I watched the level of physicality and really the level of effort overall. And effort isn't just playing hard. It's being mentally, locked in, right? It's doing the little things, playing fundamental team defense. It felt to me like Clemson thought they could go out there, throw their B game, have fun, they're at home, and win it. And Louisville had their A game. They had their A game last night, I thought. So it's not looking ahead to a certain team. It's just I think Clemson thought, hey, we're just better than these guys.
I was watching this game last night, and I was half perplexed and I was half laughing. For the last 6 weeks, when we talk about Louisville, we've been saying, man, the defense, like, it's just not living up to expectations. Certainly not expectations from last year, but even preseason. And look, I played for Ron English at Michigan, so I know no one's more frustrated than he is. And when I see him on the sidelines, I just have some PTSD of when even I would get yelled at him, and he wasn't even my position coach. But I knew Louisville was the type of defense that could at any time piece together a performance like this because of his coaching and because of the talent they still have. Playing Clemson on the road, I didn't know if necessarily that would be the week that you figure it out. But the reason I say perplexing, and Jake, I'm glad you brought this up on how weird this game was, because when you look, I had to go double check some stuff on the box score here. Clemson, 11 for 23 on third downs, 450 total yards. They rushed for 222. They outrushed Louisville. 5 penalties. It was a tie in the penalty battle, 0 turnovers for either team, and Clemson held the football for 37 minutes and 52 seconds. If you just saw that, I would say Clemson won by 14, and it was exactly the opposite. That's such a weird game. And now that brings up the conversation that someone in the chat said earlier about, I didn't think a 3-loss team was going to be able to make the college football playoff, but maybe. We've been talking about the scenario. What happens if a 3-loss team does find their way in the conference championship and wins it, and then you're one of the first 4 byes? Well, here's what's interesting about Clemson.
Yeah.
Georgia lost out of conference. Now they have an in-conference loss to Louisville. They play South Carolina at the end of the year out of conference. That South Carolina team can beat this Clemson team. That would give you 3 losses, but only 1 in the conference. They could go and play Miami still and beat Miami, or beat SMU and win the conference championship. That would give you a 3-loss team that not only is in the playoff, but they get a first-round bye.
You want to hear an incredible, if that were to happen, you want to, maybe the most ironic thing, last year, Florida State beat 2 SEC teams.
Yeah.
Went undefeated in the regular season, won the ACC championship, didn't make the playoff.
Yeah.
If Clemson somehow loses to South Carolina, makes the ACC championship game and wins, they will have lost to 2 SEC teams and not only made the playoff, but get a bye in the first round. It's just insane. Like, it's just absolutely insane. But quickly here before we get to the chat, David, tough one for your boys yesterday.
Yeah, look, I mean, Michigan lost to Oregon by that score because Oregon was a better football team, right? What was it? 38-17 was the final. I mean, Oregon was legitimately better than Michigan by that many points, I thought. And I know a lot of people aren't happy with the coaching staff. I think I think Sharon Moore needs to move forward and replace both coordinators. But for people who want Sharon Moore fired, just understand, I think he's probably about to sign one of the best football classes that Michigan's ever seen. And the NIL money is starting to pour in. Michigan's finally taking that seriously. So I know that it's disappointing. Obviously, Will Johnson didn't play in the football game. But look, I mean, hey, Jake, we were watching the game together. Davis Warren made some throws where we say that was why they went to him at the beginning. That was Donovan Edwards ran as well between the tackles as I've ever seen him run. He outran Kalel Mullins, in my opinion. Colston Loveland, I think, is the best tight end in the country, an absolute dog, maybe the best tight end in Michigan football history. And that's saying something when you got Jimmy Mandich and you got Jake Butt up there to compare it to. But Oregon is just, there are too many problems, man. There are just too many problems on both sides of the football, but particularly on offense. Here's one thing I wanted to bring up about Oregon. Tez Johnson had 11 yards receiving yesterday, and Evan Stewart had 16. Those two wide receivers combined for 27 yards. Oh, but guess what? It doesn't matter because Trayshawn Holden had 149 yards on 6 receptions. That's why this team is so tough to beat, man.
Well, I think it was the best tight end matchup on the board yesterday between what Oregon has with Terrence Ferguson, white boy named Terrence Ferguson, and then, obviously Colson Loveland, you could probably guess, Michigan tight end as well. Ferguson only had 2 catches for 34 yards, but he's an NFL guy. Blaine, Army, one of my locks, got him at 16.5. Thank God they covered.
Hey, man, this doesn't count.
Because the quarterback was hurt?
Because the quarterback didn't play.
Well, that's why you buy it down to 16.5, man.
I bought it down to 19.5. I didn't know the quarterback wasn't going to play.
I didn't either till
an APB. I need a message, maybe a light in the sky the day before or something. But we can't
somebody
send
some
5 minutes before the game and say, hey, guys, sucks to say, but our quarterback's not playing. Yeah,
but quickly, then I'm going to get to these donos. Auburn, Blaine, we're going to talk about it a little bit this week. I mean, who cares? Auburn doesn't even need to really be talked about in the grand scheme of things, but just your quick thoughts on Auburn.
One of the worst coaching jobs I've seen in a long time this year. You look like a poorly coached team. You didn't go get Peyton Thorne. You didn't go get a quarterback out of the portal. You're already set up for disaster. And you seem to make the worst mistakes at the worst possible times. And you just look poorly coached. So I don't know how many times I can sit up here and still just go to bat for Hugh Freeze. I'm getting sick and tired of it after watching those performances on Saturday. And it's not only personnel, but the coaches too. Yeah. So Auburn's irrelevant right now. And the only thing that's keeping Hugh Freeze at Auburn is that recruiting class.
Yeah, look, I agree on most points. Outside, I think the defense is playing their ass off.
Really good, yeah.
I think what DJ and Dirk and them are doing on defense, I feel bad for him. I've been in that spot before. He's, the young personnel is playing pretty good. The defense is keeping Auburn in games. Offensively, though, this is pathetic. Y'all are pathetic. And it's, I not as people. I feel like I say this every week. I know they're good people, but this is the most embarrassing offensive and special teams units I've ever seen at Auburn. And the problem with that is Hugh Freeze is an offensive guy. And look, I'll continue to say what I've been saying. It comes down to next year. But the on the field stuff, not giving the ball to Jarquez Hunter, I don't. I know he said he was gassed a little bit, said it wasn't an injury. You're calling timeouts at 2:01 right before the 2-minute warning. It's you have a quarterback that is the worst quarterback that I've seen at Auburn since since I can remember. I'd take Chris Todd over him. I'd take a lot. Hell, at this point,
that just hurts me internally. When you
it is. He's the worst. And look, the sad part is it's not just him. It's not just him. This whole offense is bad. They're all bad. The wide receivers don't block. The offensive line struggles in pass protection. Blaine, you brought this up yesterday. They never get to a linebacker when they combo block.
No.
They never do it. I've just never been as embarrassed to be in, to root for a team as I am this team. And the worse it gets, and I'm telling you, Brian Vincent and Law Monroe, they're coming in to kick your ass now. And they probably will, because this team, losers lose. And I think most and winners win. You find a way. Look at Diego Papia, right? So at this point, the Auburn offense.
What makes it worse if you're Auburn, you saw what you could have had.
Yeah,
the quarterback at Vanderbilt. You could have had that probably for not a lot, guys. Probably for a Lunchable and a toolbox. Diego Papia would have came to Auburn, but no.
No, the special teams coordinator, he's got to be fired. And it's not, I think DJ Durkin's actually responsible for field goal block, so the leverage is not him. But how Auburn's special teams coordinator, I don't care if he's a GA, I don't care if he's an SA, I don't care if he's a TA. He needs to be fired. He's just not good at this. You're just not good at this. The return game's bad. You don't block kicks. I know McPherson's been hurt, but this Towns Magoo kid, who I call Towns McHook, he can't hit a 35-yard field goal, and you've been the field goal kicker all year. And the spring game, you're hitting them from like 70. So, at this point for Auburn, you are irrelevant. And if Hugh Freeze doesn't win 7 games next year, at least or 8, he should be fired. I agree with that. But again,
hey, let's go, Vandy. Come on, Vandy.
Yeah,
look,
Vandy,
let's
bowl
go,
eligible,
Vandy. Clark
man.
Lee, baby.
Yeah, Clark
Bowl
Lee.
eligible, man.
Clark
What's
Lee.
frustrating though, I know, Peyton Thorne takes a lot of blame for this season, but when you go 20 of 29, 239 yards, a touchdown and no interceptions, Auburn should be good enough with that sort of performance at quarterback to win a home game against a Vanderbilt team when Diego Pavia was clearly not fully healthy. He clearly wasn't healthy, and he went 9 of 22 for 143 yards, and Vanderbilt only rushed for 89 yards. Auburn has to figure out a way to win that football game no matter who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, they don't know how to win. They don't have it in them. The older guys don't. But here's the thing about Peyton Thorne. If you watched that game yesterday, it was kind of deceptive. The touchdown pass he threw to Rivaldo Fairweather was an awful throw. It was an incredible catch by Rivaldo Fairweather and a run after the catch. And Peyton Thorne, a lot of times, and you got to give Hugh Freeze a little credit here, on a couple third downs at the end and the fourth downs, he was scheming guys open. Guys were just wide open. But there were multiple plays early in that game where Peyton Thorne just missed guys. You had a crosser out of it.
It's not just Peyton.
No, it's not just Peyton. The offensive line was atrocious yesterday. But offensively, it's a clown car.
But scheming guys open, that's part of what I'm talking about. That's a skill set. That's why Hugh Freeze is the head coach, because of his ability to scheme guys open so well. That's what you want to see from Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin and the guys like that who call their own plays. That's why I'm saying, even with a quarterback who has underperformed, you got to figure out a way to win that game at home. I mean, Diego Pavia full strength against the team that beat Alabama, that was a different team. I mean, Diego Pavia wasn't pulling the zone reads the same way that he was the last couple of weeks.
Very
he was really banged up.
Very true. But all in all, the defense is doing their thing, but the offense and the special teams are an embarrassment to the program. They're an embarrassment to the program. But let's go ahead and go to the comments.
All right, let's go to the Ant-Man. What's up, dude? How are we doing today? He says, guys, I do not believe in Peyton Thorne, but this defense is damn good. Sooner or later, Hugh Freeze has to figure it out. Will he make it? To next year?
Yeah, he will. I'm done talking about Auburn for today. Let's get to the done. They don't deserve our time to talk about right now.
All right, we want to get to some donations. That's one thing we can do. Let's go to a $2 donation from the Jarv. What's up, dude? Feels great waking up 9-0. Go Canes.
Yeah, look, I mean, in this college football world, Cone, just win.
Yeah,
just win, man. I'm sure Clemson would have loved to just win yesterday. I'm sure Kansas State would have loved to just win yesterday, or Penn State. So look, it's not beautiful from a complete view, but 9-0 is beautiful.
Let's go to a $5 donation from Jeremy Ingram. What's up, Jay? He says, I'm just going to say it. The fact that y'all don't have a Slump Buster shirt for sale is criminal. Y'all need to up your shop game, guys.
We tried. That ain't on us. I promise you, bud.
Yeah. Good luck. Let's go to a $20 donation from Michael Lesko, the Besco. Sorry I'm late to this. Thank you, Jake, Blaine, and David, as you all have gotten me hooked on college football. I do not think Franklin should be let go, but if Franklin left Penn State, who should be a good replacement?
Cone, who?
Hugh Freeze.
Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh. God, who would? Signetti?
What if you go back to Bill O'Brien? Back to the guy who was the bridge between.
He did. You talk about doing more with less.
Man, at a time when Penn State, when it was just a disaster.
Let's go to a $10 donation from Dave. Appreciate it, Dave. A lot of blame for DJ is on Billy, but the field sucks. So why would you make it worse for yourself by committing to the run, knowing it's a risk? DJ can pass. So sick of the excuses for Billy Napier.
Well, I mean, he messed up his hamstring early in the game. They were doing their thing. I mean, DJ Lagway hit a big pass down the field. And then when he went down, there's no Graham Mertz to help you. So schematically, I don't think it was a problem. Here's I think the problem with Billy. And see, Florida's got Auburn and Florida got a lot of carryover here. What if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Like, and the weirdest things go wrong, right? Like Auburn gets the leverage penalty to extend the drive for Vanderbilt, who scores a touchdown. Florida's got a chance to kick a field goal to take the lead, guys. Was that in the fourth quarter, Cone? When I was at your house?
I think it was in the third.
In the third? And it's a bad snap or mishandled snap, whatever, that goes, not only do you not kick the field goal, it goes 20 yards behind you, and Georgia gets it in their own Florida territory. So it's just sometimes just guys come with that innate ability, the Murphy's Law, man. We start calling it Billy's Law, which sounds like I'm a politician and something horrible happened.
Let's go to a $5 donation from Craig. Appreciate it, Craig. Says, hey, boys, could Indiana and Ohio State in 3 weeks be a Big Ten championship playing game? Sure looks that way to me. Can't wait for that game.
I can't either.
I mean, it is, isn't it? If Indiana beats Michigan, it is. Because Indiana's going to beat Purdue like they stole something from them. Like it, I mean, I think it is, right? Because I think Oregon's going to win out. You've really got no other threat. And Penn State's sitting there, but they don't play Oregon. They don't play Indiana. They lost pretty much their one opportunity. That's why this, man, if you're a Penn State fan, you're a huge Michigan fan against Indiana. Huge Michigan fan.
Let's go to a $5 donation from Miller. Appreciate it, Miller. He says, well, I have to laugh. When everyone gave me a hard time when I said University of Michigan would finish 8-4, we'll be lucky to be 6-6 this year.
Yeah, what was the reason then you said Michigan would be 8-4 though?
Yeah, that's what we got.
Or did you know something? I mean, they got All-Americans on both sides of the ball. There's no reason this team should be 6-6. Period.
See, I had them as a good team that was going to be super defensive heavy, that would lean on you, and kind of like Michigan was a couple years ago, like kind of that way. Not, this incapable offensively, but the defense still, to me, at least to me, David, and you may disagree, the defense has been the biggest letdown to me.
Well, yeah, but it's not even the player so much as, to me, it's the coaching. Like I don't think Wink Martindale has come in and done a very good job. I think this is going to be one season. They're going to move on. They'll probably replace both coordinators. That's honestly, I think, what should happen. But yeah, I mean, look, they and the schedule was tough this year, right? In a way that it hadn't been the last few years. You had Texas, you get Oregon, you're going to play the Buckeyes. So if those 3 losses right there and you slip up one more, then yeah, that's 8-4. Everybody knew it was a possible 8-4 season, but too many good players on the team to be going 6-6.
Yep.
$10 donation from Cuse. Appreciate it, Cuse. Clemson goes down. The Louisville Pick gets waxed by SMU, and your boy squad from Central New York comes back at home in overtime to go 6-2. Cuse ain't dead yet. Give me more chaos in the ACC. I want more.
What a game.
I'm glad I didn't watch that one. I stayed away from it.
What a game. It was in the upper left box of one of the TVs I had, and I kept looking. I was like, all right, Virginia Tech's pulling away. I'm like, well, Syracuse getting closer. I'm like, Syracuse getting closer. Oh my God, we're going to overtime. And then I was like, once they got you in overtime in that place, dead. Absolutely dead.
Let's go to a $5 donation from Devin T. Appreciate it, Devin. How about them Devils, boys? Year 2 and already bowl eligible. Skytaboo's bowling is a bowling ball that no one can stop. Hashtag fear the fork. Hashtag FU of A.
Maybe the most underrated coaching job in the country right now is what Kenny Dillingham is doing at Arizona State. Remember, Sam Leavitt was hurt, David, for a little bit. I want to challenge everybody to do something for me.
Oh, wow.
Go watch Cam Scataboo's high school highlight film. It is insane. It's insane. The runs on there, it doesn't look real. It really doesn't.
Hey, what if I told you before the season that when Arizona State and Oklahoma State play each other, one of those teams will rush for 226 yards and the other will rush for 85? Which one would you have taken?
Yeah, I'd have been like, well,
hey, I can't. I'd feel
226, man.
It's crazy. I'd feel remiss if we didn't talk about what Joey McGuire did this weekend against Iowa State. First of all, that post-game presser, bro, I was almost in tears.
That was real, man. And it's funny, I do this radio hit each week, and I got to pick an underdog. And Texas Tech was my underdog this week at 13.5. But just the way they came back after getting their guts ripped out the week before. First off, overall, that game was amazing. That was an incredible football game at the end. Rocco Beck, I mean, even going into halftime, Rocco Beck makes that big play. Second half, they're back and forth. Baron Morton, man, he's got some witch in him. Yeah. We talked about him before the year, but what an incredible game. And I tell you what, it's That's a really big one for Texas Tech, but it's an even crazier one for the Big 12, and it was even bigger for Colorado, who, again, I'll say it, Colorado and BYU were the biggest winners in the Big 12 yesterday.
And
Kansas State goes down, and they were off. And you know what? Maybe that's the key.
That's the key. Just have more bye weeks.
I mean, Alabama caught a couple breaks. They were off. LSU got a couple breaks. They were off.
How about that Texas Tech defense, though? I mean,
I know.
That's the unit that really stood up. And now can you do it again against Colorado? Yeah. Because Colorado is going to be coming into town this next week, and that's going to be for a chance, I think, probably to play in the Big 12 championship game the way that this is going now.
Yeah, and Tennessee survived Kentucky. Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, Tennessee, we didn't talk about that one. I mean, Tennessee now, they've scored 7 points, 7 first-half points in the last 4 games.
Everybody was so gassed up. Everyone was so gassed up last week after Nico. Everyone's like, well, he's mediocre.
Well, see, I don't think a lot of yesterday was on Nico, though. Like
the offense in general is just mediocre this year. It's a mediocre offense in Tennessee.
Yeah, well, okay, but like Nico was dropping balls in the bucket that guys were dropping. I mean, there were multiple big plays. I mean, the first half, they'd drive all the way down the field, or they'd almost hit a big play. I think Nico threw the ball better last night than I've seen him throw in a long time.
He made some good throws.
Like but you fumble, right? And then you're dropping passes, and it's just I don't know. It's just getting hard to trust Tennessee to like, all right, he like turn the style. Let's go. Like, when's it gonna come back? It just, I don't know, man.
What's more concerning for me is this tale of two halves approach. I mean, while it is really good, if you want to pick a half to play better in, it's the second half, right? Because you're making your adjustments and it's good coaching. But man, the first half is just so flat. How many times now have we seen? I think it's 4 weeks in a row. Tennessee can't really get anything going in the first half, can't really score, and then all of a sudden they explode in the third quarter, and Dylan Sampson has a rushing touchdown and rushes for what he finished with yesterday, 142, something like that.
He's so good.
Man, he's incredible.
He's an NFL back.
Yeah.
So the $2 donation from War Chant. Appreciate it, brother. BLMO called Big Ten refs a clown show. What is y'all's thought?
Did he really?
Listen, I'm Team Brett here. You know how I feel about officiating. Those who can no longer play coach, those who can no longer play or those who could never play or coach referee. I'll always believe it.
$20 donation from Ant. Appreciate it, Anthony. I'm sick of people saying Auburn will be fine. They won't, because Hugh Freeze can't coach. He lied when he said Hunter was gassed. The leading rusher in the SEC got 12 carries for 50 yards. 7 points, Hugh, against Vandy. Ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, it's, again, I'll continue to say I think eventually they're going to turn it around, but that answer is not – it's not going to make people feel better today. But it's you got to call a spade. This offense, what this coaching staff and what this personnel on offense have put out in the field this year and on special teams is beyond pathetic. And it's undeserving for the Auburn fan base to have to continue to watch this bullshit display. And I think I speak with everybody in saying you either need to figure it out, because Auburn fans, they're sick of you letting them down every week. They're just tired of it. It's the sport they love the most. Thank God for Bruce Pearl. I do know that.
$5 donation from the Hog. Appreciate it. If Clemson is a conference champ with 3 losses, then a G5 team will have a very good shot to be a higher-ranked champion and get the bye instead.
Think about Boise State. If it comes down to the ACC and Boise State's 11-1 with a loss to Oregon, that's a better resume to me. That's a better resume versus an 9-3
That's a really solid point. I still don't know if it would happen, but that's very possible.
That's about as close.
Golly, that would be if you. We talked earlier, I think one time preseason. What would the scenario have to be where the group of 5 team climbs to get the bye and not one of the top 4 teams?
Because it would have to be the ACC or the Big 12, right, David? Yep. There's no way they'd usurp a Big 10 or an SEC team.
100%, because I just don't think there's a team right now in the SEC or the Big 10 that can make their conference championship game with 2 losses, the way things have played out right now anyway.
Agreed.
But a couple more things here. Hey, that Nebraska loss to UCLA, that's a bad loss, but a great win for UCLA going on the road and beating Nebraska.
Yeah, Dylan Raiola went down in that game. I thought Harburg did, what he could at the end. That was a hell of an interception. By the way, in the Iowa game, and Iowa beat Wisconsin to death, that was one of the best interceptions I've ever seen. It hit off the guy's hand, went down, he kicked it off another guy's chest, and it bounced back to him. He caught it and ran it.
I saw that. Was wild.
That was insane.
All right, let's get these on that $5 donation from Deb. Appreciate it, Deb. My 7-year-old wanted to say hi. He's still talking about how awesome the tailgate was. Appreciate y'all and the show.
Appreciate y'all.
What's up, buddy? Let's go to a $5 donation from The Gambler. He says, Beanie is cooking college DCs. You should get a head coach interview. Would be a good fit at Arkansas.
Ooh, interesting. I'm keeping my eye on Arkansas too to see what Sam Pittman does. But that's a good call there with Eric.
All right, let's go to a $2 donation from the Crunk Donkey. What's up, man? I'm trying to see if you put anything under it. You did not, but if you come back and put some under it, I will get that read just for you. Let's go to a $2 donation from Steve W. Thank you, man. He says, because Wink sucks, David. That's why he should not be the defensive coordinator at Michigan ever again.
David, you shouldn't have hired him. Shame on you.
I know that's my fault, guys, for hiring the Giants defensive coordinator, but man, it has not been good. How much does that speak to Mike McDonald and to Jesse Minter these last 3 seasons?
Mm-hmm. They went to the NFL. He came from the NFL, and y'all suck now on defense.
There it is. There it is, Crunk Donkey. All right, $2 donation from the Crunk Donkey says, I do not trust Tennessee at all. Every game takes years off my life.
It feels like it takes years to end, and that should never happen with Tennessee, who should be going at warp speed.
Let's go to a $5 donation from The Wave. Appreciate it, man. He says, Miami National Champs, book it now.
That'd be fun.
Put 100 on it.
Really appreciate all the donation, guys. Really.
Hey, how about the Georgia Southern football Eagles yesterday?
Hey, thanks for coming on the show, everybody.
Yeah,
going to Mobile and beating South.
Jake, I can't believe you're just going to let that happen, dude. Walked in your house.
Yes. Gotta.
Walked in your house, got in your fridge, and made a sandwich.
I made a call last night to the AD. There's some unacceptable happenings going on. I think I'm going to be the head coach of South Alabama and the special teams coordinator at Auburn.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Sweet.
We can do that. But all right, thanks everybody for showing up. I'm going to go get another one of these sausage biscuits. Oh my God, they're so good. They're homemade. Jimmy Dean, Tony, you know how it goes. By the way, dude, y'all balled yesterday. We really appreciate y'all having us over there.
You're welcome, man. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody in the chat. We'll see you tomorrow, live 2 p.m. Central. Hit that subscribe button. Subscribe or die. Y'all know what it is. We're gone.